Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
So, this is our first global spotlight since Betsy and I returned from Rootstep.
Finally
And
got to meet in person. That was
we did finally get to meet for the first time face to face. So that was cool. I tell people walking into Rootstep was like walking into the inside of the internet, and all the websites were there, and all of the people that I see online, I got to actually see in person. So that was a lot of fun. But I'm curious, Betsy, what did you feel were the primary themes of this year's Roots Tech?
Oh, well, my experience was solely in the exhibit hall.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was my first time, and the exhibit hall is just so phenomenal, that was really satisfying in and of
Yeah.
itself. I feel like connection was really the theme. I mean, I think it's always a theme, I would imagine, but um, the Family Search was really making a push towards, finding out who your cousins are, who are in attendance. And, of
Yeah.
course, my personal experience was finally getting to meet a lot of people face to face. So yes, connection was the big
Yeah,
thing.
I think that's interesting because I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. That was a big theme. And I remember thinking how far behind all these other sites were, because that's what WikiTree does,
Yeah.
is we connect people.
Yeah.
And these sites were coming up, Ancestry, Family Search, all the big ones, talking about how they're trying to get people connected with each other. But they have a long way to go before they they match WikiTree, I think. Um, the other two of the other big themes that were that we heard a lot about were AI
Mhm.
and DNA. I think those were two of the biggest topics. But what also I think was maybe not as obvious, but I picked up on it because it's my topic. It was the global representation that
Mhm.
was there. There were a lot of booths that were country specific, including countries you wouldn't expect, like the Chinese booth.
Yes.
And there was not only the booths, but also some of the classes. There was a class on Iranian genealogy, a
Mhm.
Jewish genealogy in Iran.
Mhm.
Um, so that was a pretty specific topic. But that was something that struck me, was how much things are expanding into the global market. And
Yeah.
I think big sites like Ancestry and Family Search over the upcoming years will have a lot more countries included. I was just reading something yesterday about an individual who has gone to Uganda and is copying all the records there and getting them onto and digitizing them all. It's just a single individual, but he's there doing that.
Under like a sponsoring organization, or just
Well, I get the feeling like this person may be some sort of philanthropist himself and maybe self-funding.
yeah.
He has a school that he is um, either building or has built there in Uganda. And while he's there doing that, he's also digitizing records. So
Mhm.
um, it wasn't clear exactly where his funding came from.
Mhm.
Um, but um, that's one of those I call them genealogically obscure countries. They're not necessarily obscure as a country, but genealogically speaking, they
Right.
are obscure.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. And as far as our global project goes, that's going to be a real boost for us, because some of these countries that we're creating projects for, we still don't have a whole lot of resources.
Mhm.
But I think over time we're going to get more and more. So that's going to be it's going to be good for us, and it's going to be good for people that may not be finding what they need on WikiTree right now. But as the years go on, I think more and more people will be able to find connections on WikiTree. So
Mhm.
that's my hope for the global project. Right now, we're still in our infancy, but take a look at us in 5 years, and I think we're going to be it's
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be amazing. Yeah. So um, I think I recognize almost all the names in the chat room right now. So I don't see a lot of new people. There's a couple of people I don't recognize, but one of the things I wanted to say before going forward with today's session is that we do have the challenge of creating the session in a way that is relevant to both new people who know nothing about WikiTree or the global project versus people that have been around forever and have already heard all this. So those of you that have been around may know this stuff. Those of you that are senior genealogists may know a lot of this stuff. But I think if you you pay attention, you're going to get a few gems here and there that can help even people that maybe have been around a while. And then also, for those of you that are brand new, I think I'm going to try not to go too fast and too beyond the basics, but just hang in there. If you don't understand something, eventually you'll come back to it and you'll say, oh yeah, I remember they were talking about that on the Global Spotlight. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to give that disclaimer that we're going to kind of go back and forth from the basics to more advanced. So and then also I wanted to mention I have a cold, so hopefully my voice isn't terrible. I lost my voice 2 days ago. I'm hoping I can get through an hour of talking without it going away again. But I kind of had nightmares about that last night as I was sleeping. So let's see. Sandy asked the question if I could give a clue. I gave a very obscure clue, but I posted some questions on or some clues on G2G over the day. Does anybody have any idea what country we're going to start with today? Does anybody?
I'm curious to see. What clues did you give?
Well, the clue I just posted here was that this country has a 12-man army, and they are completely funded by volunteer donations. So,
okay, Lisa,
I might narrow it down. Liechtenstein is a good guess. That's not right, but that's a good guess. This country, obviously, it's a small country, but surprisingly, I was surprised. This is the 6th smallest country in Europe, and which means there's 5 other countries smaller in Europe, and it's the 16th smallest country in the world, which means there's 15 smaller countries across the globe. San Marino's a good guess, but that's not correct. Switzerland, no. The Vatican, no. I think the Vatican is the smallest country, if I remember right. All right, I'll give you a more a geographic clue that maybe you'll help. Oh, somebody got it. Jen got it. Andorra.
All right.
Going to Andorra. Andorra is a tiny country of about it's less than 500 square miles. I don't know how that translates. I had it written down how it translates into kilometers, but yeah, it is about 400. I think it's 450 square miles. It is located in between France and Spain, and we're going to go through our website on Andorra. We do have an Andorra project that is now active. And it is hosted by Mark Lemon, who is also hosting Liechtenstein, and he is also hosting Greece. He's put a lot of effort into the Greece project, and that's going real well. But he's now working on Andorra and again Liechtenstein as well. So let's just go through, for people that aren't familiar with the global project and how we set up our pages. We're just going to go through.
David, do you want me to go back to the global homepage so we can show people how
to? Yeah, why don't we go back and show them how to find it? So if you go to the global project, so there's a couple ways. You can Google WikiTree Global Project and it'll take you here. You can also go up into the Find drop-down menu up at the top of your screen from any page, and there is a projects page there, link to projects. And if you click on that, it takes you to all the main projects of WikiTree, and Global Project is listed there. So that's 2 ways you can find us. And from this page, Global Project basically is divided into 2 sections. We have one section that is all of the countries of the world. We have 199 of them. They are not all up and active yet, but we have about 75 active countries now, I think, somewhere around there. And then we have what are called the worldwide projects. And we have 3 projects there. 2 of them have been around a while. We have the first responders and Remember the Children. First responders covers obviously first responders, but from around the world. And Remember the Children focuses on children who died before adulthood. And now we have a brand new one that just started this past month, and that's called the Died at Sea project. And that is for anybody that died at sea in any capacity. So it's shipwrecks, it's people who maybe just got sick and died on a ship, people that just went missing. It can be military people during wartime. It can just be private passengers. There's just anybody who died at sea and not on land of a particular country is covered by this project.
What a wonderful way to memorialize those lives.
Yeah, it's a really nice project that is taking off. We've got a lot of members. I don't know what the recent count was, but I'd say we got about 24 members.
Yeah, look at that, 22
members within just a week or so. So it's
excellent.
Really interesting project. We'll see where that goes.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So we've got those 3 projects, and then all the other country projects are on a separate link. You click on country projects right there, and you will get an alphabetized list of every country of the world. And there's basically 3. No, actually, there's actually 4 levels right now, I would say. So we've got our top tier projects that have been around forever, and those are always all stay intact. Global Project doesn't oversee those. They run independently. There's 24 of those. We have our new projects that are managed, and I think we have about 25 of those now that are that have a manager, a coordinator, and our teams are actively being put together. We have another probably 30 countries that have pages, but nobody is managing those yet. We are still looking for coordinators. So if you're interested in coordinating a project, take a look at the list and see if there's a country you'd be interested in working on. And then we still have probably close to 100 countries that we have not yet created the pages for, but we will. If you would like to oversee one of those countries, or even just be a member of one of those countries, drop me a note and we'll move it to the top of the list. I'm getting through these pages about one or two a day, but I obviously don't work every single day, so probably averaging to about 1 a day we're adding. But I can move I can move a country up to the top of the list if I know people are interested. So just drop me a note and let me know. And Jamaica, I'm getting a question here. Jamaica is up. It just opened up yesterday, maybe the day before. But yeah, Jamaica is there.
There it is.
Yep.
Jamaica.
There's Jamaica.
Yeah.
Now, all of the countries that are overseen by the global project are going to have the same format. So when I talk today about Andorra, and we go through the different pages, you'll find the same pages on each of those. If the country is not overseen by the global project, as I mentioned, the 24 top tier countries are not overseen by the global, so you'll still see whatever they had previously, they still have. But the ones that we're setting up for global start out the same. Now, once you get a coordinator and a team put together, they're free to modify the pages however they like. So the teams, or the individual country projects over time are each going to head their own direction, and that's what we want. But to start out, we're starting out with the same template for each page. And if you do decide to become a coordinator, realize that we are going to give you a completed page to start out with. You don't have to design a page. And I think that's been a deterrent for a lot of people, is they don't know where to begin. So we will begin for you, and then you just step in and take over. It's kind of what they call turnkey, like a turnkey web page. Okay, so let's take a look at Vendora. We've got a lot of material that I want to cover today, so we're going to go through this a little bit quickly. So when you go to the home page, you're going to find just some basic information. If we can scroll down a little bit, we've got our mission statement, the goals of the project. We have under resources there, basically just says go up to the top and click on the resources page. But yeah, you've got a resources page. And then the basic information, they list our leaders. There we see Mark Lemon is the coordinator of the Andorra project, and the steps to to find our G2G post, and steps on how to become a member. So this is real basic on this first page, and again, you'll see this on every country. When you click on it, you're going to see basically the same thing here. So if we go to the second page, which is where we start to get the real good information about the country, this page is intended to be a real basic primer for somebody that wants to do research in Andorra. This is not intended to be a thesis on the country. It is simply a guide to give you some hints of what you need to know and where to go for more information about it. So for example, we have the location here. It tells you where it's located, followed by the administrative divisions. And that we're going to talk about today a little bit. Knowing how a country is divided into administrative divisions is important. And what I mean by that are counties, towns, cities, whatever they call them, provinces. Just like in the United States, for those of you that are American, I don't know the breakdown of our audience right now, but the records are found in the counties. So if you know your ancestor was born in the United States, that doesn't do you a whole lot of good as far as finding records. You need to know what county and ideally what town or city they were born in. Mm-hmm. So this tells you, and it's surprising, a country as small as Andorra, they have 7 parishes, they call them. Mm-hmm. And you need to know what parish your ancestor came from in order to find the records. Mm-hmm. Particularly in some of the countries that are less, non-Western countries that are less advanced as far as their paperwork and their record keeping, you're likely going to find most of your records not in the government offices, but in the church records. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what tiny town your ancestors came from, you're not going to know what church to look at. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And when we're done talking about Andorra, I'm going to talk about how to find your ancestors' hometown in a foreign country. We'll give you some resources on how to do that. I give a little bit of history here. And so Andorra, so just to give a little review of Andorra's history, Andorra is believed to be, I think, the 14th oldest country in the world. They don't know for sure because it goes so far back that the records aren't clear. But the belief is that Andorra was created by Charlemagne. He had awarded it to the bishop of, I'm going to pronounce it Urgall, but I'm not sure about that pronunciation. But the bishop of Urgall was, it was the Count of Urgall initially that he awarded it to. The Count sold it to the Catholic Church, and the Bishop of Urgall became the leader of Andorra. And this was, I'm sorry, my phone's ringing here. Okay. So the Bishop of Urgall was the leader until about 1200, I guess I'm looking here, 1278 or so. The Muslims had come in and populated the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal. and that was a problem for Charlemagne being a Christian in France. So there was some conflicts there, and Andorra was created basically as a buffer between the Muslims and the Christians. So in so doing, they created a co-principality and named the King of France. This was after Charlemagne's time, but the King of France became a co-prince along with the Bishop of Urgell. And that structure has stayed in place ever since. So we have now a co-principality there. The two princes of Andorra are the Bishop of Urgell and the President of France. That's a very interesting thing, because the President of France, who most people don't realize is also the Prince of Urgell, is an elected official. So it changes every time there's an election in France. They get a new prince. He's the only elected prince in the world. What's interesting about that, though, is he's not elected by the Andorran people. He's elected by the French people. So the Andorrans don't get to vote for their prince. France votes for their prince.
Wow, how irregular.
Just a very unusual setup there. Now, in the 90s, they've made some changes, and the two princes are still in place, but they have a little bit less authority than they did, and they've created a stronger central government in Andorra. But it's a very unusual. In fact, it's completely unique. It's the only country in the world with two monarchs, and the only country with an elected monarch, and the only country with an elected monarch that's elected by another country rather than its own citizens. So now the prince, the Bishop of Urgell, obviously is appointed by the Pope. So he too is not selected by the Andorran people. He's selected by the leader of Vatican City. So in a sense, both princes are picked by other countries. So interesting. Now let's scroll a little bit more, show what the rest of this page, and then I'll talk about one of the monarchs of Andorra. But let's first just look here real quickly for people that are new. We have a section on the ethnicities that you'll encounter, the languages that are going to be spoken in the country that you're looking at. The Andorran people are believed to be very closely related to the Catalan people of Spain, and they share a common language. They likely were at one time the same people, and until they broke off into their own section. So you're going to have that, and then also we talk about the religions. So these are important for you to know. You need to know, for example, with Andorra, that it is a Christian country, so you're going to be looking in Christian churches, but there are also Muslims, there are Hindus, there are Jewish people in Andorra. So you can't assume that because Andorra is a primarily Christian, it's 88% Christian, but you can't assume that your ancestors were Christian. And what we're pointing out here is basically clues for further research. We're not answering the questions for you, but we're giving you clues. And then links, as you see there on religion, it'll say see also at the bottom there. Click on that, it'll take you over to a Wikipedia page or some other page that talks about the religious history in that country. So anyway, that's kind of a summary of what you're going to find on the first page.
Right. David, I have to say, I really love this section on the Catalan alphabet and how you give some guidance on the special characters that we're not accustomed to in English.
Right. So this was put in place by Mark Lemon. I don't get credit for this, but this is exactly what I point out. If you decide to take on a country project, this is the kind of stuff you can add in there. I'm limited in time as to how much I can put into each of these countries when I set them up, but my hope is that the teams will jump in and add all kinds of this stuff that that I'm not able to. So this is really, really wonderful stuff. And if you check out Mark's Greece page, he's got the same kind of setup there. Lots of information that he's put in that I did not. And also you've got at the very bottom here, just a real brief statement on naming conventions. Some of our country projects have more elaborate descriptions. Some of them are simpler. So the Andorrans generally follow the Catalan Spanish naming customs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you understand the Spanish naming customs, you'll be able to follow the Andorran customs. But that's important because you need to understand that not all countries have surnames like we do in the West. Spanish names, Latin American names, often carry the mother's name as well as the father's name forward. We've got Asian countries that put the surname first and the given name second.
Right.
You've got some countries, particularly when you get into Africa and some of the more recently developing countries, they don't even use last names up until the last couple decades.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our Arabic names are that way. They don't have surnames. They just they do the patronymic system like the Scandinavians do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not necessarily the same patronymic system, but it's father's name. Surnames aren't handed down. Father's names are handed down. So there's a lot of different ways that countries do their naming, and so we've just put a little blurb here to give you a hint as to what you're looking for. And then again, you can click on that link where it says "See also Catalan names," and that'll take you to a page that gives you a whole lot more detail if that's the topic you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we head on over to the notables section.
Mm-hmm.
So tab number 2 is our notables. And if you scroll down there, I'm going to take you just down this. So we list the prime minister and presidents of each country. Here we have the co-princes, which is the prime minister, and then the Bishop of Urgel and the president of France. So we've got links to them. And then there's an interesting story about one monarch. Scrolling down just a little bit further. So the Andorran monarchy was very short-lived. This is King Boris I. King Boris I showed up in 1933 in Andorra with papers showing that he had been sent over from Russian officials who had declared him the king. And rather than verify the paperwork, the Andorrans just accepted it as fact and made him king. And he was king for a very brief, I'm not sure I have it. It's on his page, but very quickly they found out he was a fraud.
Yeah.
And he was arrested and spent most of the rest of his life in prison. But no, I don't have the dates there either. But it was only a matter of weeks, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But the Andorran people did declare him their king, and he is officially listed as the one king of Andorra, even though it was completely fake. So an interesting story there. So for the sake of time, we're gonna skip going over all the Andorran notables. There are a few listed here.
Well, the Andorran, of course, they have a national anthem. I would love
national anthem. Yeah.
You always pick such interesting notables, David. I mean,
that's one of the most fun parts of putting these together is finding the people. Some of these countries like Andorra, it's a little hard to find, a half dozen famous people. They don't have one thing. Andorra's population is about 70,000 right now, but in 1900 their population was 5,000 people. So they've grown quite a bit over the century, but with only 5,000 people, there weren't a lot of famous celebrities amongst those 5,000. So finding people from history that were of enough notability to include was a challenge. And now again, Mark has added some to here, so he found more than I did. But anyway, so real quickly, let's just show the resource page.
Of course.
And then we'll move on to
a lot of these notables are not connected.
Not connected, yeah.
So opportunities for Connect-a-thon.
The opportunities are there, and if you have Spanish or French experience, a lot of these families, migrated out of Andorra for job purposes, etc., and you'll find them connected to not only Spain and France, but other countries in Europe, as well as probably the United States, because we've got people from everywhere here. Finally, the resources page, just real quickly, and then we're going to move into today's topic. Every country has a resources page. We've got the Wikipedia link, family search resources. Ancestry doesn't have any Andorran resources right now, but they may later on. So we want to check that periodically. We got Cindy's list, World Gen Web, Library of Congress. They don't have an Andorra project, but they do have a European reading room that likely has Andorran resources. And so far, without fail, I have found an online archives and library for every country I've looked at. So you can go to the National Archives. And I have actually written emails to a couple of these, not Andorra, but some of the other archives and libraries, and I've gotten prompt responses. So don't be afraid if you're looking at a country that maybe is, as I said, genealogically obscure. Don't be afraid to contact the archives and libraries directly and ask them what they can do. You'd be surprised at the records that they do have that just aren't online. So, every country is going to be different, but I've gotten some very prompt responses from a couple of these archives. Okay, so today, what we're going to talk about for the second half is as I mentioned earlier, in order to do research in a foreign country, and when I say foreign country, I mean a country other than the one you live in, we have to, you need to know the district that they live in, if not the specific town. Ideally, you want to know the specific town or community that your ancestors came from. And we don't always have that information right offhand. So we're going to talk about over the next couple sessions ways to find your ancestors' hometown. And today we're going to talk about using immigration and naturalization records. And there's a few that those of you that are more experienced with genealogy are probably familiar with, but I've got a couple that you may not be as familiar with. So we're going to go through these. Hopefully we've got enough time here, but I'm going to start. Let's switch over to, let me present here. Okay, so we are going to look at, to start out with, we're going to look at ship's passenger list. Oh, they're backwards here. All right, these are not coming in order, so let me find.
I don't see, you have to click present.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the, okay, there it is.
Oh, sometimes
I'm trying to find the right page first. They're not showing up in the order that I thought they were. Right. But here it is. Okay. Oh, did we work? Did that?
Yep. So now I'm going to add you to the stage.
Okay, this one isn't showing up. So where are we at with?
Now
are you able to see anything?
I see. You can look on the screen. You'll see. We just see a JPEG file.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened. Okay.
But if you click on another tab, and then up at the top, it will say switch to this tab, and you can just click on it, and we'll see that tab.
Okay, so let's go share this tab instead. Let's see. Okay, so we're gonna skip over that. Okay, so you recognize this person? So this is Desi Arnaz, Ricky Ricardo. He is, as most of us know, is from Cuba. So right here we have his passenger list. And let's see if I can scroll in a little bit. Now, first thing we have to realize is that he didn't go by Desi Arnaz at the time. It's a little blurry. and I cannot read it exactly, but we've got his original name, and again, it's blurry, so I can't see what the first name is. Again, is Deso Cereal something. Anyway,
David,
Arnaz.
you have to switch the tab because we're still seeing the photo.
Oh,
Have you moved on?
this down instead.
There we go. Great.
There you go. I'm sorry. Okay. So so we've got his original name here, which again, it's blurry and I can't read it. So we're just gonna move on from there. It says he was a student, he spoke Spanish, he was Cuban, and if we go here, it says he was born in Santiago de Cuba. So we now have his place of birth. So a passenger list is often a great way to find a place of birth. I'm going to show you a second one here. Let's see if I can do this a little more smoothly. Second passenger list. I have to click a couple times, it looks like. Is that showing up?
Yeah, we see a photo of, is it Olivia Newton-John?
That is Olivia Newton-John. So this is, she was not American. She was born in England, and she immigrated to Australia. But the same situation with the passenger list here. We have switch it over. A lot of switching here.
There you go.
Okay, right here, Olivia Newton-John, 4 years old, with her family. And let's see if I can scoot it over here.
Yeah, I see her.
Are we seeing it?
Oh, we're seeing it. I mean, unfortunately, we can't see the collar. Did she come over with family? Because I see do.
Here we go. Yes, I'm sorry, still learning this. Okay, so there you can see we've scooted over a little bit, but there at the top it says 343 Hills Road, Cambridge. So that's where they came from. Her father was a lecturer, mother a housewife, and the children. But again, we've got their home address from England in the passenger list. This is her arrival at age 4 in Australia.
And Flo from the chat gave a really good suggestion to categorize passenger lists either by arrival or by ship name. I love that idea. Never thought to do that. Thank you, Flo.
Yeah. So that would be the first place if you're looking for your ancestors, is to find their passenger list. Now, Betsy, I forgot that we were going to show the sorcerer tool.
Sure.
So do you want to do that real quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to use my family as examples, starting with my dad, who was born in Taiwan and came over to the United States in the early 1950s. So I pinned my sorcerer extension because I use it all the time. And I know you can't see my pull down menu, but I'm just going to search for Ancestry. And oh, I see, wait a minute. Interesting. Now I'm having some difficulty there. Okay. So there are all the results for my dad on Ancestry. But since I'm specifically interested in immigration, look over here on the left-hand side, and that's going to narrow it down. So I'm just going to click on immigration and emigration, and then it narrows things down so that it gives you, now I can see that these first two, of course, I can see his birthday, which I know these are definitely him. This must have been I'm not sure what was going on. My dad actually left me an index card. I'm sure he didn't know I was going to be involved in family history, but I found in his records an index card with a timeline from when he arrived in the United States and where he was over that sort of first 10-year period. It's just such a gift so this is not his initial entry, but you can see you get the passenger list here. Using it says nationality Formosa, which was the former name of Taiwan. He was 35, and that he flew in on PAA, whatever, and the flight number. So we have that. And then if I go to my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who grew up in Bristol, and we do a similar sort of search. I'm going to search Ancestry here. And again, do immigration and emigration. There I can see. And the nice thing about some of these records is that it will give a connecting person on the other end. Like who is your person from where you're coming from? So here it says her, one of these, it gives her father's name versus who is your connecting person in the in your destination country. So those can be very, very valuable hints. Now, as we all know, you can also search family search with Sorcerer, but neither David or I know how to filter by collection. But I will show you. Let me quickly go on over to family search, and if someone in the chat knows how to do that, we would love to know. So if I search and I do records, and then what I can do, well, let me browse all collections, and now over here on the right, I can filter for migration and naturalization. And then go from there. You might want to narrow this a little bit. So you're still seeing 301 collections. So you might want to, and you can narrow it down. Say you want to do someone who, if you know your ancestor specifically migrated to British Columbia, then boom, I'm down to one collection. So, and then you could click on that and then search for your person within this specific record. So,
okay, so to summarize on that, we as we're going through these records, some of you that are newer to researching, may be asking yourself, well, where do I find the records? That's a really cool tool that we have at WikiTree, the Sorcerer app, which you do need to download. But once you download it, you just go to your ancestors profile, click on the Sorcerer tool, and then pick which site you want to go to. Family search, Ancestry, Fold 3. There's probably a dozen or so different sites you can choose from, and it'll take you right to that search page. Now you can actually go to the Ancestry family search and search from there as well if you're familiar with how to do that.
right.
But it's kind of a shortcut to go directly from your ancestors WikiTree profile over to the search page of whichever site that you're interested in. So
what Ian is saying here is a really good idea. If you say you find the record initially in Ancestry, see if you can find it in Family Search, since that's a free collection.
Yes, Family Search is free.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of overlapping records, but they also, Family Search and Ancestry do, but they also have a lot of records that the other doesn't. So you can often find things that you can't find things on one that you can't find on the other.
Right.
Okay, so the next group of records, ship passenger list, are pretty much global. It doesn't matter where the ship was going to and from, you're going to have a passenger list. The rest of these are going to be more American centric, and that's primarily because that's what I know. I don't know all the immigration rules for the various countries of the world, but I do know American. But I imagine that most countries are going to have something very similar. So passports and citizenship documents. You're going to need to do some research if you're not American. You're going to need to do some research as to what documents your country has. But again, I'm going to assume that most countries, particularly Western countries, but I'm going to guess in modern times, being 1900 and forward, you're going to find similar records in just about every country. Every country has their own immigration records and rules. So do a little bit of research and see what you can find. But we're going to talk about the American immigration process, and we're going to start with some records that I don't think most people are aware of, and those are called alien registration forms. And let me see if I can now switch over back to me for sharing.
There. Okay.
Do we have it?
Yes, we're seeing
seeing a photograph on a
on a form.
On a form. Okay. Does anybody know who this is? You can real quickly post it because I'm going to tell you.
Bob Marley.
It is Bob Marley. Yep, that's Bob Marley's alien immigration form.
Wow.
Now, these are not readily available, to my knowledge, on Ancestry and Family Search, etc. There may be some, but I haven't found them. But they are available through the U.S. government. So you can file what's called a Freedom of Information Act and get an alien registration form. Now, an alien registration form is for somebody who came to the United States, lived in the United States, but was not a citizen. So this has nothing to do with citizenship. This has to do with people who are citizens of other countries that are either visiting or staying in the United States for a lengthy period of time. Now, Bob Marley is an interesting one because he came over a couple times and he was deported a couple times. And in his file, you can, as I said, you can file a Freedom of Information Act. I'm not going to talk about how that's done here because it's a lengthy process, but you can Google how to file a Freedom of Information Act. You send that to the government, and then they will send you the complete immigration file. The file for Bob Marley is online. If you Google Bob Marley alien registration form, you can see there's actually a couple sites that have it. But not only, I've only put this page up here, gives a cool photograph, gives a little bit of information, but he had to go into the embassy and defend himself as to why he was overstaying his visa. The reason was because he had cancer in his toe and he was having surgery, and the doctors needed him to stay in order to complete whatever process he was going through. So he had to go into the embassy and sit down for an interview, and they asked him all kinds of questions about his background, where he was born, what he did for a living. Their question was, their suspicion was that he was here to make money as a musician and not for his medical treatment, that he was using that as a ruse. So there's a lot of in-depth questions of, have you performed at any nightclubs or at any private events? Have you, what have you been doing since you've been in the United States? And it gives a lot of, inadvertently, it gives a lot of genealogical information. So it's really kind of cool. It also gives his complete medical records. So you can get that. And you do not have to be a relative of the person to get it. These are government documents, and they are open to the public under the Freedom of Information Act. So read about how to do that if you're interested. If you have an ancestor who was here and was not an American citizen, see if you can find their file, and you'd be surprised at how much information is there. So that's another place to find out a birthplace, which is what we're talking about today, how to find the town. And now this page here doesn't say where he was born, but it does say that he interviewed at the American Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. So for this particular page, later on he's interviewing in the United States, but his initial passport was from Kingston. So we know at least he was in Kingston at some point. Whether he was born there or not, we don't know from this document. Okay, so for some reason, some of my photos are not coming up, so we'll just go with here. So when an individual wanted to become a citizen, they had to file a declaration of intention. They had to do that, and then after filing that, they had to wait at least 3 years before they could become a citizen, and they had to show in that 3 years that they were a good solid member of the community. They had to be in the United States for 5 years, but they had to be, and 5 years from coming to the United States and at least 3 years from filing the Declaration of Intention. These are fantastic documents to get information about your immigrant. This is for Dr. Albert Einstein. One of the coolest things about him is that they always include a photograph.
Switch the tab.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah. There we go. Now we see.
Do that. Okay. So they always include a photograph. Well, not always, but the more recent ones. In the early days, they didn't have photography, obviously. But moving into the 1900s, you're going to find a photograph. And for some of us, we've never seen a photograph of our ancestors. We don't have any. If you can find a declaration of intention, you'll be able to get a photograph of your ancestor. This is actually a fairly nice photograph. Sometimes they're really, the photocopies are really dark and obscure, but it's worth a try. So if we go up to the top of the page here, we're going to see Dr. Albert Einstein, lived in Princeton, New Jersey, professor, age 56, male, white with fair complexion, brown eyes, gray hair, stood 5'7", weighed 175 pounds. That's all really cool information to have about your ancestor. He's Hebrew or Jewish, German nationality. And right here, I was born in Ulm, Germany on March 14th, 1879. So there we've got his hometown, and we can now go to Germany and look for his records in Germany. An added benefit of this page is the second section says, the name of my wife was Elsa. We were married April 6th, 1917 in Berlin. She was born at Hechingen, Germany. I don't know if I'm saying that right. On January 18th, 1877. So you also have his wife's place of birth. So if you have a female ancestor that you're looking for, if you're looking for her place of birth, look for her husband's naturalization records. I say look for her husband's because up until the 1920s, I believe, women did not typically file for their own citizenship. They were granted citizenship based on their husband's citizenship. So if Dr. Einstein became a citizen, then Mrs. Einstein also became a citizen. What Betsy and I were talking about this a little earlier. What a lot of people don't realize is that women could also lose their citizenship by marrying somebody who wasn't an American citizen. So if you had an American-born woman who was a citizen and she married a German who was not a citizen, she lost her American citizenship. Many people don't realize that. Now, that wasn't, for women back then, that wasn't a huge ordeal because women couldn't vote, and therefore there wasn't a whole lot of reason to be a citizen. But symbolically, it's just interesting that they, that's something I'd never heard of before. And one more thing they have here, at the place of residence of each of my children, Albert was born in 1905 and Edward was born in 1910. Both were born and reside in Switzerland. So if you're looking for their records in Germany, you're not going to find them. They're going to be in Switzerland. So that may be something, you didn't realize about your family, is that they at some point in between lived in a separate country. And in fact, if you scroll down a little bit further, my last foreign residence was Bermuda, Great Britain. Bermuda was a British colony. So they actually lived in Bermuda before they came to the United States. And you may find records in Bermuda.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on how long they were there and what events happened in their life. So
And
you got 4 countries, Germany, Switzerland, Bermuda, and the United States, where you could be looking for records.
Just looking at this record makes me want to make a timeline, which
Mhm.
is so helpful when you're researching a person's life, of just like,
Yes.
where they were at different dates, and not only locations, but significant family events. And it really helps you piece together the context of
Yeah,
what was
I
going
use timelines all the time, and they are they're really, really helpful for finding not only where they were at various points, but where the gaps are.
Yeah.
How did they get from one place to the other? What happened in between, and those kinds of questions. So this is called the Declaration of Intention. This is for the purpose of telling the United States that I am wishing to become a citizen. They had to be here for at least 3 years after filing this declaration before they could get citizenship. It expired in 7 years. Not everybody followed through and became a citizen afterwards, or they may have became a citizen 10, 20 years later. They'd have to file a second declaration of intention. So keep that in mind. The next document here is called the my screen shrunk here. Okay, this is called this is the petition for naturalization. So this is the form that they signed 5 years later when they wanted to become a citizen. I've switched off my tab here, so just one second.
Oh, we see it.
Yeah, you see it, but I wasn't able to.
Okay.
Okay, so this is going to have a lot of the same information. So I wouldn't say that one of these forms is any better than the other as far as collecting genealogical information. It is written 5 years or so later, so there may be changes, or there may be information that they spell out differently. You can see on line 3 here, again, born in Ulm, Germany, living in Trenton, New Jersey. At this point, he's a widower, so there's information we didn't have before. We now know that his wife, Elsa, had passed away. He doesn't give a date for that, but we know a time frame because she was living at the time of the declaration and deceased by the time of his petition. Oh, here it says she was deceased for 2 years. So we have an approximate date, would be 2 years before this.
And David, we have a question in the chat.
Sure. Yes.
Did you obtain these records on Ancestry, or where did you find
everything that I've got here? I got from Ancestry, except for the Bob Marley. That was on a private website. But these other documents were all available on Ancestry, and I used the sorcerer tool. I went to Albert Einstein's page on WikiTree. I clicked on the sorcerer, and then I narrowed it by immigration naturalization records, and this was the first thing that popped up. So it was real quick. Took me 5 minutes to find these documents. Now, there were a couple people that I searched for and I couldn't find them, and there can be any number of reasons. It could be that the records don't exist for one reason or another. It could be that Ancestry just hasn't recorded those. One thing to keep in mind about naturalization and naturalization records is a person could go to any court in the country and become naturalized. So it could be, there's records in federal court, there's records in state court, there's records in county courts. So Ancestry, Family Search have not digitized all of the naturalization records, so they could still be out there. The trick is to figure out what court, and if you know where they were living in the United States, try the local courts and see, the local courthouse and see if they've got the naturalization records. You're just going to have to search for them if they're not online. But again, this is going to give you pretty much the same information. And so if you ever hear the terms first papers and second papers, the Declaration of Intention were known as first papers. The petition for naturalization were known as second papers. Mm-hmm. So you'll see that sometimes on census records. Sometimes it'll say first papers, second papers. That means they're in the process of being naturalized, but they haven't received their certificate yet. The third document that they will get is their certificate of naturalization. That typically is not going to have genealogical information on it. That is simply a certificate that they could take home and frame and show, hey, yes, I'm a U.S. citizen, but it's not going to have the information that the forms have on them.
David, I have
yes.
a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a sort of statute of limitations of availability of these records?
I don't know that, and I was wondering that myself. I'm not sure if there are privacy guidelines on them or what they are. They're not as long as census records, because we've got some of these here that were. Let's see what the date is on this. This is 1935. Yeah, I'm not sure. I was wondering that same question.
Yeah, because I have my dad's certificate of naturalization because he had it and it was amongst his papers, but I haven't seen his declaration of intention or his petition.
Yeah, so here's a piece of information that most people don't realize. A lot of documents that are currently sealed, you can still access if they pertain to you, or if they pertain to your direct ancestor, like a parent or grandparent. So for example, the census records, 1960, 1970, 1980, you can access the information about your family on those. It's a long process, and they give you very limited, they redact a lot of information. But it might be enough to find out what town they lived in, or a particular family member that you may not know was there. I've never done it, so I don't know what's available, but I would imagine you might be able, with the Freedom of Information Act, get your father's naturalization records. You can't just do it with anybody. You're going to have to prove a direct connection. And I don't know specifically what the rules are for naturalization, but it's worth a try if you're stuck. See what the rules are. Just Google it, see if you can find out what the regulations are.
Because the cool thing for me is I was there when my dad became a citizen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was 5 years old, and they allowed me to walk up to the judge with him. So I mean, that's a indelible memory for me. So
yeah, that's actually very cool. So this last one here is, I'm going to pull it up here in just a moment, but this is Kenneth Rowe. Now, most people probably don't know who Kenneth Rowe is. I'm going to start with a little picture if it'll show up. There's a picture showing.
Yes.
Are we seeing the picture?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this is Kenneth Rowe. Kenneth Rowe was a North Korean, and he was an Air Force pilot in North Korea. This was during the Korean War, prior to there actually being a formal North and South Korea. But he defected. It was very famous at the time. He defected to South Korea and eventually moved to the United States and became an American citizen. The reason I chose to show his is because North Korea is one. People have mentioned this several times, that we are never going to find information from North Korean records because, obviously they're a closed society, but you can still find stuff on North Korean ancestors or other individuals. It's just takes some creativity, but there are records available. And here's an example. If you have North Korean ancestors that left the country and came to America. Let me pull up his. I didn't find his petition for naturalization. One of the things was he changed his name 3 times. He was he had a Korean name, he then had a Japanese name, and then he had an American name. His final American name was Kenneth Rowe. But this this document is his wife's naturalization record. So this is a woman who actually became a naturalized citizen on her own. What's interesting about this, pull it up again here. Okay, so Clara Rowe, she had married him at this point. It says right here she was born September 20th, 1934, in Kaesong, Gyeonggi-do, Korea. So although she was born in North Korea, we're able to find a record of the town she was born in. She did not file a declaration of intention, and at first I wasn't quite sure on that, but why that was. But it says somewhere on here, I'm looking for it. Might be down below. Well, I'm not seeing it, but there's somewhere on here it says that she was excused from doing that. Well, the reason was because she was married to an American. She didn't have to file a declaration of intention. So my point with that is when you're looking for these records, it doesn't matter whether it's naturalization or anything else. You need to understand the laws that go that surround these records, because you don't want to spend a whole lot of time looking for a declaration of intention on someone who never filed one. And if you realize that women who married American citizens could go directly to the naturalization and skip that point, you're not going to waste a whole lot of time looking for a document that doesn't exist. So make sure you understand what the rules are at the time period. The rules changed over time. So what was the time period? What were the rules at the period of time and in the place, whether it's in the United States or another country? What were the rules for naturalization, and what documents would be created? By understanding that before you do your search, you'll save yourself a lot of time looking for things that don't exist. Another thing to point out here, and I'm not wearing my glasses today, so it's a little blurry, and I'm having a little trouble finding the piece of information that I wanted. Now, this is not the document that I'm referring to. So let me tell you 2 other documents that that you want to be aware of. First off, we talked about ship passenger list. Airline passenger lists are also available on Ancestry and Family Search. So if your ancestors came more recently and they flew into the United States, you can still find airline manifests listing the passengers on the airline. So just like ship's passenger list, you can find the airline passenger list. Not all of them, but many of them. The other thing is some people crossed into the United States by foot, either in Canada, via Canada, or Mexico. Even people who are not Mexican often flew to Mexico and then crossed into the United States from Mexico. And there are border crossing registers available as well on both Family Search and Ancestry. So if your ancestor came across the border, whether they were from Mexico or Canada, or whether they stopped in Mexico or Canada on their way to the United States, if they cross the border into the United States, there will be records of that. And that's not only for their initial immigration. If they went back and forth, I run the Notables Project, and we have a lot of actors and actresses who travel into Canada to perform, and many down to Mexico to perform, or for other business, even just vacation. A lot of times you can find those records. And the other thing that I did not pull up an example of are passports. So if you have ancestors who just traveled, if they went on a trip to Europe, my great grandmother and her sister took a tour of the world in the 1950s. And I have copies of both their passports that I got off Ancestry.com. And those also have a place of birth listed. So
and possibly a photo.
And a photo, yeah. If they're into the early to late 1900s, you're going to have a photograph on them. So that's it's a great way. If you don't have a picture of somebody, look for passports, look for naturalization records. And if it was, I'd say 1920 forward or so, I'm just guessing at a date there, but you're going to find photographs. And that's pretty cool. All right, so that kind of wraps up naturalization immigration records. Next time, we're going to continue. Let me close this out here. Next time, we're going to talk about some other records that you can find your ancestors' place of birth. There's a slew of records that potentially will have that information. And so we'll go over some non-immigration and natural. Immigration and naturalization is where you want to start. If you can find those, you're gonna be in a good place with that. But if you can't find those records, again, maybe they don't exist, and maybe they just haven't been digitized yet. If you can't find those records, I've probably got a dozen other places you can look. So we're going to talk about that next time, and we'll also have another country that we'll preview. I don't know what it is yet, but if anybody has a recommendation, I'm happy to hear them. And also, I want to mention two more things. If Betsy, if you could put the link to the Globetrotters in.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we have the Connectors Challenge coming up in mid-April. I think it's the 12th.
Yes, 12th through 15th.
Okay. But we're taking signups now. If you go to G2G, there is a Connectors Challenge sign up. Each team has its own post there. So if you scroll down to Globetrotters, we'd love to have you on our team. If not, pick another team, but it would be great if you could participate. And Globetrotters, you do not have to work on a foreign country. You can work on anybody you want. So if you live in a country that you're comfortable researching, go ahead and join. United States, England, Sweden, all those countries that have teams, you're free to join those. But if you want to join the Globetrotters, we welcome you as well. And there was, this is our Globetrotters page. You can go there. You can read a little bit about us. We came in first place last year. It's our last January. So we're going to try to do that again. But Betsy has a team of newbies coming up.
I know. So sadly, I won't be able to join you. But
I think they may wind up being those newbies can be quite enthusiastic. So they may be our biggest challenge. But and last month was our second our last Connectathon. It was our second challenge, our first Connectors Challenge. So to come in first place was pretty cool. And then the one last thing I want to mention is that if you are interested again in either being a member or a coordinator for one of the countries, just drop me a note and we can get you set up. Every country of the world is ultimately going to have a page, but I can speed up the process if there's a country that you're particularly interested in. Again, not just as a coordinator, but even if you just want to be a member, we can get those pages up and going. So I don't see any other questions here. So I thank everybody for coming, and we will be, we're the third Monday of the month. I don't know what the date is next month.
Oh, April 22nd, same
April 22nd. Okay,
yep.
Same time.
Yep.
And we will be here with a new country and a lot more documents to show you. So again, thank you, Betsy. Thank you everybody for coming.
Thanks,
We'll
David.
see you soon.
Okay, bye.